Yeah. Okay. So I see that now it's on and we can start. Well, I can say that according to the time, it's the time for questions and answers and the time to finish the seminar and to listen to the questions and give the answers. Yeah. Daur and Karan, do you have many questions? What to do? That's life. C'est la vie. Okay. Well, I can say that I have a list of questions from one of the participants of the Human Like course, and I am asking you just to know if you also have questions, or if you don't have, then just prepare them. Okay. So according to the time, I don't think that we will be able to do like complete 2 hours, but we will try to fit as much as it's possible. So let's start from the practical parts. This is the question. Wow. What is this? Okay, so I will copy this to my overall list, and then we will discuss this. Okay. So, of course, people who are only starting to work with Bio-Well, one of the first questions that when they already know what it is and what it measures, then they are asking, well, how it works and how reproducible it is. On the previous lectures, I was just saying you that it is like it is, etc. But still, if you search on internet, there are opinions that and the people who are blaming that it's not reproducible. So let's do it live. I will switch off my video and just share my desktop. So I have a Bio-Well connected. Here you can see one. And now I will be conducting consecutive scans, and you will see what I'm doing, and I will show you the calculations. So off. See my desktop. So everybody can see my screen now. Yep, Karin. Yep. So there is a special program that we are using in order to check the state of the devices and tune them, etc. So what we can do, we can imitate the regime that we are using when we are measuring fingers. So we measure once in 5 seconds. So what I do is I will make a series of 30 images with 5 seconds interval. Click yes, start, and now it will start doing it. So what do you want to look at? We will see those 30 images being done, and then we will see the variability of the parameters. Main parameters are area in pixels and average intensity in relative units. So, of course, yeah, it's something like calibration, but it's not calibration in a way of that is being made in the Bio-Well software that you are using. No. We are doing this on your devices before sending them to you with this software. This is special software to check the state of the device. So if it's okay or not, etc. So you don't need to log in anyway. It's working without internet. So that's just for us to check. So it's working. It's doing this captures for, it's already 16 made from 30. And what are the main interests for us is the area and the medium intensity. So that's what we will be looking at. So how it's being calculated, this deviation. So usually we are measuring 10 images, 10 fingers. Well, in most cases we measure not 10, but we make at least 11 or 12 captures, because there's always a need to recapture 1 or 2 fingers. So that's why we will calculate the deviation for the 10 last images. That's the formula that is built in this program. So we will see what is the deviation between the biggest and the lowest value in last 10 images. So you see that now the process has finished, and now you can see the parameters here: area, intensity, average area for the last 20 images, average intensity for the last 20 images, average area for the last 10, average intensity for the last 10. And then the difference, the deviation of area in percentage, in percents, and difference in intensity in percents. So what is the main interest for us is these two. So if we take a look here, we will see that deviation of area is started from 11th, because it's calculating starting from 1st until 11th for 10 last. So this is 3.51%. The deviation in intensity is 1.69%. So maximum deviation in intensity 2.2, and here it's like 3.5 or something like 4.3 maximum. So that's what I was telling you is, and then minimum is 245. So that's what I was saying, is that device is working in this corridor. Itself, it will be deviating for there is like maximum 5% in area, and in most cases like 2-3% in intensity. Okay, so this is clear. So that's just if we take any other, even other devices, the best result that they can show is like 1.51% deviation in area and something like that in intensity. So it's going to be like 2% maximum in area and 1%, around 1% in intensity. So it's a little bit more reproducible, a little bit more. But if we compare the pricing for these devices, this one is like 1,000 euro and those are 10,000 euros. So it's a big difference for this to pay for 1% of deviation. Okay, this moment is clear. Yes? Daura, yes. Karen? Cool. So, what are we going to do now? I'm going to place a finger on the electrode instead of the metal cylinder. And I will measure it for, I don't think it's for so many times, but let's see what it happens. Of course, my finger is not a titanium cylinder, and it shouldn't be so stable. Okay, so I'm keeping my finger on the electrode and waiting for at least 10 images to be taken. Of course, due to the humidity and that's the inner space of the device there where I put the finger is closed and there is no ventilation there, of course it increases the deviation and changes the parameters. But anyway, and of course we are not keeping finger for like 1 minute there when we're doing real measurements. But when you're looking on the image, you can see the reproducibility of the same image. So how it changes. So we see that if we have one sector that is not structurized well in comparison with others, then we see it in all images. So I'm a little bit tired of that. So it's already 17. I think that's enough to see the comparison. Okay. Let's stop. Okay, and see what we have here. So you remember that we have around 5% maximum for the device itself with the metal cylinder that is not making any changes and it's not moving. So if we look here in these two columns, we see that more or less, well, not including the last two images, that is like 16,000. We have like 8%, and when a finger become more sweaty, it changes the states and increased after some time, but it's too much time to keep the finger in the same place. But we can see that for 11 captures, we have a 8% deviation in area and 4% deviation in intensity. So that's how it works, and that's about reproducibility. How can you do such things in with your devices? So if you go to Bio-Well, sorry, in Russian, I will go to English version. Okay, so what we can do is that we can make a scan, but instead of 10 fingers, we will put there each time same finger. More. And I think this one. So all of them okay. I know how to put the fingers. So you can go here, and by clicking on each finger, you can see the parameters of the fingers. again, you can see the area, the energy, the average intensity, etc. So let's see the difference. Here we have area difference from, this is the first, this is the last finger that I captured. So difference is only 125. So what is 125 pixels? You could take 100% is 15, 3, 6, 5, 100, it's 1%. So we have less than 1% deviation in area between these images. So let's take other images in comparison. For example, this one is different. So this is 13,000. So let's calculate this one. So this is 15,365 minus 13,685 and 1. So here we have the 10%, well, it's 11% deviation between these two captures, between capture 1 and this one. So, and we remember that device itself gives us 5% variability, and it means that 6 other percent is my variability, because my fingers cannot give absolutely the same result always. Okay, so let's take some other. This one is more. So, but anyway, we can see that it's not more than 15%. Yes, again, 7,000, 7,000, 700, etc. So, of course, the fingers images are deviating more. So, let's compare, for example, this one, and, for example, this one. So, other parameters. If we see the energy, this is 5.6 here and 5.9 here. 114.43 in intensity and 114.55 in intensity here. So I can say that most of the parameters are fitting into the norms of standard deviation that is being described in the books, and that we know that it's normal that person's parameters can be varying in 10% corridor. Okay, this is about reproducibility. So you can do such experiment with your own device, and if you will find out, for example, that it is not showing the same reproducibility, then that's going to be a warranty case, and you can say that, well, my device is not working properly, I need to replace it. But most of the devices that, all of the devices that we are sending, we are checking them, and we are checking these parameters too, their reproducibility of the data that they produce. So, is this section clear? Yeah? We have only 2 people, so I'm asking only you. Even though that other people can see this webinar afterwards. Okay. So, next thing that I wanted to explain is what parameters should we consider when we are trying to make some kind of research, trying to make comparison, because there's so many data here, so many parameters, so many data, and if we look here, you see like, wow, which of them are important, which of them are not, and which of them we should take into consideration, etc. So if you're really wanting to make some kind of research and comparison. So what do we do? Let's take one person. For example, this one. 2 captures. And question is, what parameters can we take into consideration when we try to make some explanation to a person? And how can we make the comparison? So, first of all, what I will say that stress parameters, energy parameter, balance, and organs balance are all in green zone. They're all okay. So there's generally this person is like, as we can say, health, yeah, like relatively healthy person. That's how the doctors say. So there are no healthy people on planet Earth. They're only relatively healthy. So, but anyway, when we are doing such analysis, we see this green, 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 then there's nothing to say about the overall, about the general state of the person. So everything is okay from this point of view. So then we move on to the health status. How we can compare them? We can go to the compare tab. Also, we can click between them here. Well, not so convenient, but anyway, if you remember main problematic sectors that you should take into consideration, for example, those that are going to the this being inner energy deficiency region, or those that, for example, that are not here, but those that are going to the yellow region, and then you just compare them if they're the same on both captures. One of the main things here that, of course, there are many numbers here, but these numbers are just explaining you the same that is being shown here. Is you see that this is the gray 0.0 circle. Closer to the center, it is minus, negative values. From this 0.0 to the outer range, this is positive values. So, for example, if we take this sector, you can see that it is below this line. That's why it is minus 0.52. For example, this one is absolutely on the line and it is 0.0, etc. But these things are just, these numbers are just giving you the opportunity to see these things and to analyze them. You don't see this parameter as 0.0 here in the list, because this 0.0 is a comparison of the light of this exactly this sector with the light of the metal cylinder, the test object that we're using during the calibration. Okay, people I'm testing are showing a deficit in the orange area between pink and green, but their energy scan on the bar showing normal. It is showing normal. Yeah, okay, so let's look at this. What do we see here on the health status? This diagram is representing calculation of only one parameter, pixels, area of the gas discharge. For example, here we have 3,351 in this sector. So it means that if we take the metal cylinder image, then we will have the same area. This diagram is not taking care of intensity of the image. Whilst when you're looking at the energy here, it is calculating area times intensity. That's why if intensity is high and the area is low, then the overall energy can be normal. That's the case. Okay, Daura, do you understand the explanation? Yeah. So when you go to energy reserve, this is the place where we see the energy parameter, energy diagram. So these numbers here, you see that they're like 4.4, 4.3, etc. Or these big. They are now these parameters are devoted to energy that is calculated. For example, if we take this one, 6.00, you see here energy in joules. This one, 6.00. So this parameter is the same that is shown here. Okay, question. I can use those numbers on the outside though, or on the yellow. I can use them for analysis. Of course, you can use them if you need them. But this the thing here, this main thing here is you can use the energy. You can use this one. Doesn't matter. You can go here to the balance tab, or well, to organs energy, where you have same sectors with the energy on the right side, or some average parameters for two sectors, for the eyes on the left and right side in average overall. So here's like 4.53 for two sectors and 4.87 for two sectors on the left side. So overall eyes energy is 4.7. So here's only for one sector, for example. But of course, if you want to calculate some specific dependencies, or you are studying specifically the influence of some impact on eyes, on duodenum, on liver, or on heart, etc., on cardiovascular system, then you just measure this, take exactly the sector that you're interested in. For example, we are studying cerebral zone, cerebral cortex. So we can take parameters for all the people for cerebral cortex. There is a possibility to export these parameters to CSV. They're listed here. And then you can copy these parameters Karen, can you hear me? Okay. Returned. Okay. So, and then you can do whatever you want with these parameters. You can make the comparison in the Excel. So main thing here is that if you're interested in some specific parameter, you take epiphysis, for example, or you want to study only the nervous system or some other, then you can select this on any finger for a cerebral zone, and you can export it or to any folder. And here you are. So these are area, normalized area, intensity, inner noise, etc. All the parameters here. So I will explain which parameters we should take into control a little bit later. So we're interested, for example, in cerebral cortex. So we take only these and delete all the rest, for example. So then we check the same, we extract the same sector data from all the measurements that we've made for a person and compare exactly the parameters. So for example, if we take this person, we go to the same and then we can calculate the difference. Or we can calculate the difference in percentage. So for example, if we take the first one as 100%, and this is the difference that should be divided onto so this is percentage. Of course, we can change the format to make the calculations. So, well, you see that, for example, here it's only 2% difference, 3, minus 3%, etc. Well, 1.4, well, 12 inner noise, but this is the parameter. Inner noise is this noise inside the quarter. This is not the main interesting parameter. 2.7, 0.1, etc. So then we come to a question: which parameter we should really take into consideration when we are trying to do the comparison? So not simply visually, like saying, okay, this looks better than this, etc. What we can take into consideration. Number one is these four parameters. They are the best to take into consideration because they are, number one, digitized, they have exact numbers, and number two, they're normalized, they have normal regions, so you can see if the difference, for example, let's go to compare. So for example, if we go to this tab, we see that initially it was 55.6, then it became 57.7. So we see that the difference is very low, and it's like nothing changed. Its difference is no more than 10% deviation, or even 15% deviation, not even close. But for example, here we have almost 9%. It's difference. It's closer to like 10% difference according to the initial state. That's something to like take care and take into consideration. But main thing here is that we see where it is moving. For example, here before was better than after. So we have the trend into the out of balance. For example, here we have no trend at all, or like it's moving even closer to the mid of the norm. So that's also a parameter to consider, is where it is moving to. Is it moving towards the norm, or it is going out from the norm? So that's why when we are simply calculating the deltas, that's not giving us some meaningful information or normalized information, I mean. So it means that if we see that it's changed for 12%, what does it mean? Is it good or bad? That's what we're caring about. We want to make a conclusion. And simply delta, well, it's low, then it means that nothing changed. So if it was like higher than 15%, then it means that there's something to look at. And then you are looking where it was and where it moved. If it was out of the norm and then moved towards the norm, that's good result. If it was in the norm but then moved out of the norm, then it's bad. Okay, but if we look at these four parameters, look here, number one, stress, and number two, energy. We have parameters that can move from norm to both sides, to calm or excited state, to the left or to the right. Here we can also go from the norm to the left or to the right. But for example, for these two parameters, there's only one direction. You can go to the norm or out of the norm. Whilst for these two parameters, you can be on the left side, for example, calm before the experiment and very excited after experiment. So it means you can miss the norm and go out of it, and you were out of it, but in the negative side of it. So this is also another one meaning that you can add to the data, is where the influence is moving person to. How to make interpretation of it? Well, first of all, if you are trying to see the difference before and after, so you're measuring a person and then, for example, you are asking a person according to the standard procedure that is of receiving client, that is described in the methodology guide that you all have, is that you should measure first time and then ask person to make some physical exercises and then measure second time. In this case, you should look what happened with the person before and after, and what is the direction where it moved, towards the norm or out of the norm. It can still stay in the normal region. For example, for energy, the normal region is wide from 40 to 70. So it can be like 50 before and become 69 afterwards. So that's something to consider and to understand. Whilst if it was like 30 and became 55, then it's absolutely clear. That's okay, that's good, because a person normalized his state. So another thing is that when you're applying any kind of influence on the person, you're applying some kind of therapy, etc. Before, after, which direction. What is important is what kind of influence you're trying to do. For example, if you're trying to harmonize the person, then you would expect that all the parameters should be going towards the norm. That will be a positive trend. So, but when you are trying to, not to harmonize the person, but simply to, for example, treat the person from some kind of illness, or help person to get rid of some problem in the body, then in most cases, first reaction of the body is negative reaction, is like you're breaking out the person from the balanced state, even if it was low, but it was balanced at that low level. Then your first that you are making is you are destroying the state that the person was in, and then you're trying to establish a new order. So it means that if you are trying to do these things, then the first reaction of a person will be negative reaction. It's like if you measure right after such influence, you will see negative results. So it means all the parameters, or some of the parameters, will move out of norm, either too low or too high, or just in balance, for balance and normal balance towards the low. So well, yes, something like that. Daura is writing that she had a client whose energy was falling into the orange deficit zone, and she increased the supplement, and she came up into the green, which means that she needed a higher dose. Well, something like that. But it depends what kind of effect you are expecting, because if your manual therapist is you're trying to correct vertebrae, then first reaction will be that person will be very painful and will not feel very good and comfortable right after the influence, the therapy. But it will take time, and then after some time it will be like this. I will draw it. Something, if you have the scale, like it was somewhere here, then you applied some influence to make it better, but it became worse, and then it improved and went up. So in many cases, you will have this period when it's becoming worse than it was before. And main thing here is to understand what time it takes for a person to adjust to this new state. Okay, we have a new person here, not an it. Good evening, or what is there in your place? Good night. Yes, many things can make you sick right after you apply influence. But then after some time, you will go to a higher stage than you were before. So it's like to construct a new building on a place of older building. You have to first destroy the older building, and then build a new one. Then it's coming to your concept of levels of homeostasis. So What does it mean? If you have read the book by Dr. Korotkov about the interpretation of the parameters that you get, let's close it. Okay, so well, book about the interpretation, basic interpretation of the analysis in bioelectrography. It's called, in other words, Blue Book. So there he explains the homeostasis principle. So it means that person has some levels at which organism is stable, like it can be stable or like oscillating around the stable state. But the next stage, for example, not so good health, but also stable, can be lower, and person can oscillate his state around this one level. But the transfer between these two states of homeostasis is like quantum shift. So you're staying here, but then you, for example, accumulated too much toxins or too much of something or too much stress, and then suddenly you make like in very fast and in a very short period you just shift to another homeostasis level at a lower level, and still you will be stable and staying at that level. That's what I'm meaning, what I meant when I'm saying that when you're trying to do something with a person, the first thing that you need to do is destabilize this person, because if he's still staying on the same level, well, you can do something, but it will be still the same level. So first thing that you need to do is to break the person out of it. So then he goes away, and during the shift, you can see that person is feeling worse, like sick, and only when he reaches the other level and get adjusted to it, and you measure person again, you will see positive result. So it depends on the influence, because for some influences you will see negative results in the first 20 minutes, and then it will become positive in like 30 minutes. For some influences, you will see immediate result, immediate answer of the body. For some influences, a person needs to get adjusted to it. So there's another one explanation of it. Is like I like some images that we can have in our minds. Yeah, yes. When someone is very nervous about the test and in high stress first, but when they calm down, you will test them again and see that results will be changed, of course. But it is more devoted to the images with filter, without filter, because with filter is not so dependent on the stress state. So another image about this homeostasis level. For example, let's imagine that you're these stress factors that you are talking about are connected to the images without filter, because they're more psycho-emotional. If you measure a person twice with filter, there won't be so big difference. Images will be almost the same. Well, within those 10% deviation. Okay, so the image that you can have is like, let's imagine that you are living on a pyramid, and let's imagine that your pyramid is so big. So it means that even that you move from the center to the right or to the left, let's imagine that is 1 meter. So even if you are completely drunk and you are walking in a zigzag way, you can still stay on this level. Okay, but let's imagine that you changed your state and you're tuning in and becoming more stable, and you move to higher levels of the pyramid, and those higher levels are more narrow, and when you climb, for example, on this level, then if we take this, the same state that you are in here, and you get yourself, so here your oscillations cannot be higher than this big, because in other way you will fall down to lower levels. So to stay on this level, you can oscillate, your state can be changed only like this, not to fall down from this level. So it means you cannot drink alcohol already if you're living on this level, because if you drink it and then your path will go like this, you will fall down to these levels. So if you want to stay, you will have to watch after your state to stay on the same level and not to destabilize yourself too much. So that's about like tuning in, and these are like levels of homeostasis where you're more stable. Still on one stage you are stable, this one, then if you fall down then you're stable on another level, etc. But anyway, shifting from one stage to another, it takes time, and this adjustment to a new level, it takes time. So that's what you should consider when you are trying to make interpretation of the data. What time it takes for a person to get adjusted to the changes that you've made with him or her. Okay. So let's return to the software. Yes, it takes time. In many cases, and even medical doctors are understanding that, they're saying that right after you start taking some treatment, you will get worse for some period of time, and only after that time you will get better. Okay, so you should know that some of the parameters, for example, stress, energy balance, and organs balance, are normalized parameters. It means, or like they have norm. So you have the reference according to which you can make interpretation. So for all of them, you have norm. For example, here you also have norms. So, but you see there are numbers in green under the diagrams. This is the integral area. This is the overall deviation from zero circle. So you see that all the sectors are minus a little bit lower than zero. So that's why overall we have minus 4.2. Here we have minus 9.4. So here we have much lower integral area. So this parameter is not normalized. It means that you cannot say if it's good or bad, norm or not normal, but you can make only relative comparison. So you can say, for example, that changes for more than 10% or more than 15%, as we say, for captures without filter is okay. If it's below, if the changes are higher than 15%, then it's not good. Then you compare before and after. But you should see that there is, for this integral area, there is like norm is, absolute norm is 0.0. Yeah, but overall there are no norms for parameters. So for example, if you go here and take, for example, inner noise parameter, there is no norm defined for this parameter. If you take, for example, entropy coefficient or form coefficient, you see that in this software there is no norms for these parameters too. So that's why what you can do while comparing these values is only relative comparison. So between before and after, but you don't have the parameter that is letting you know, is it moving towards norm or out of norm? Or these parameters will have norms after some time when we collect enough data. So okay, yes, those parameters under the health status is showing how far from 0.0 the diagram is. It can be minus, like here, so it's energy deficit, or it can be plus if it's in yellow zone. No. Without filter, it's psycho-emotional. If anything goes over 15%, then you should take it into consideration, because 5% are from the maximum of 5% is from person, and maximum of 10%, 10% from person, 5% from device. So overall it's 15%. But in most cases, if you see that some people are deviating maximum 10% in time, even without filter. With filter, deviation shouldn't be higher than 10%. It should be 5% more stable. That's how it is. So that's how you can make interpretation of any parameter that you see here. So if it's 99.0 here, and if it's like 1 is 1%, so if we'll have 116 afterwards, it means that it is a significant deviation. If we will have like 82, it will be significant deviation. If we take it with filter, then it's like 10% is already significant deviation. So, but these deviations are, for example, here, you should know that it's like not only like 10 or 15%. Here it's, if it was 3 and then it became 4 point something, it already, even if it's like less than 10% or higher than 10%, doesn't matter. Here we have corridor of norm. That's another interpretation. So this is clear. So we can take into consideration these 4 parameters. These are the easiest ones. We have them here, 91% and 57 joules. Here they are. So we can take these parameters, integral area here, the green ones. We have the integral energy here for left and right. You see 113, 127. Okay, so main interpretation here is that the diagram of energy reserve should be higher than the diagram of health that is based on the area only. Next, there are parameters that I recommend to use are the area itself for any sector, energy, average intensity, and entropy and form coefficient. Those two last are speaking about the same things, but they're calculated in different way. Well, really, they're just explaining how chaotic is the image, the structure of the globe. For example, if we take here number 4, so form coefficient is 1.3 and entropy 1.9. If we take here number 4, its entropy is 3.5 and form coefficient 1.2. So they are calculating the parameters in a different, these two parameters are being calculated in different way. That's why they're changing differently. It's up to you because they are not normalized. There are no norms here yet. So that's up to you if you want to use them or not. Yes, I said that here energy, you see that this is energy reserve, this orange line. If you apply the health status diagram here, it's red line, then you see that how it should be is that the red line should be inside the orange line. So the energy reserve should be always higher. If it's almost coincide, it means that person needs rest and to restore the energy reserves. Okay, so I've explained to you about the parameters. So that's how you make the interpretation and the comparison of the data. So you take the parameters that are more significant. Of course, you can also take if you're interested in the psychosomatic things, you can take chakras, the alignment and the index, and exactly the parameters of each chakra. That also can be one of the variables that you can take. Yeah, well, these circles, the balls, when they're bigger, it means that the energy of the chakra is higher. When they're smaller, the energy is smaller. I don't remember. Let's check once again, because in new version we will be adding some changes in the chakra program. So you see that in a new program, for each chakra you will have energy in joules, alignment in percents, and index. This is the overall like normalized parameter that is taking into consideration the alignment and energy. So for example, this one is small, it's 96, 2.8. So that's how it should be calculated afterwards. But that's up to you how you will use these parameters. Main thing here is that smaller have lower energy, like this. So if you see the balance you will see that norm is something close to 5 joules. So that those like this one, 4.55. This is like this. This one is close also. You see that it is almost absolutely in the center. It's 100% alignment. Okay, so you can take these parameters into consideration too. Okay, so it's already 7:30 here. My wife will kill me. We will cut this from the recording, of course. So the last thing that I want to explain today is with and without filter. I have a lot of questions about this. What is the main sense and main difference between with and without filter, and why sometimes we're using filter and sometimes we're not. For example, today I had a client and I measured her before and after the sit-ups. But you see that, for example, if we take her initial state here, I see that even without filter, her initial state is very good. So if you do analysis, that's norm. The health status also close to everything is on the green side, etc. And more or less good balance, only like 3 out of 5. So then I decided that if the person is in such a good state, there is no big deal and no big sense in making measurements with filter. Because what does really filter? It's not a filter really. It doesn't filter anything. It just dissects the sweat influence, stress influence on the images. So it means if you see such a good image, even without filter, it means that person is not under the stress. So stress has not yet eaten at the energy of the person. So even if I measure a person in such a state with filter, the images will be almost 95% the same as images without filter. That's why I used only without filter twice to see the state of the person before and after. But let's imagine we have the case when person is not in a perfect state on a psycho-emotional without filter. Well, like we see that there are some sectors with decrease of energy. Then we need to understand if it's a temporary thing, like only for today, or it's more something that person is living for a long time with it. Then we apply a filter and test the same person with filter to see if these sectors will be with problems on the images with filter. Okay, is that clear? Yes. Okay, so it means that, for example, if we are talking about measurements of a person before and after some exercises, so according to the standard procedure that is described in the manual, so it means that we need to make measurements with filter, without filter, then make exercises and make measurements without filter again. Why there is no sense in making with filter once again? Because sit-ups or push-ups are not such a big deal for our body, for the physical level. So yeah, of course you will be like a little stressed, but this stress you will see only without filter because it is much more sensitive level than the images with filter. That's why you will see all the changes without filter, and there is no sense in making second time with filter. But for example, if a person has some severe things or severe illnesses, then of course there is a sense to see the before and after with filter. Okay, so this thing. Okay, this is okay. Almost 1.5 hours past. Let's make last part of this webinar. I will just answer the questions that were accumulated during the past weeks. Okay, so question number 1. The machine has to warm up, but for how long? Yes, that's what I'm recommending people to do. What I normally do when I start working with the devices, I'm making captures in a regime of calibration or in an environment regime for like 50 captures with a titanium cylinder on the electrode. Well, how you can do that, that's what I recommend before starting to work. Calibration is good, but I recommend to make this. If you have time to warm up the device, then it's better. It will work more stable after warming up. So, showing you the desktop again. So, how you can do this warm up? You just go not to calibration but to the environment, and you just start. And then it will be making these captures each 3-5 seconds interval. So here it should be making like within 5 seconds interval, and you should just leave the device for at least 3 minutes. So if you calculate, then it will be making 12 captures in 1 minute. So like 36, like 4 minutes, 5 minutes is maximum that you need. Is if you make like 50 captures, well, just that's not to make some test, just to see if the device will come to more stable level of functioning. So in this regime, you will see this the parameters are deviating, but well, I have already warmed up the device and it wasn't in such a bad state when we started now. Anyway, so in this regime, if you put the device in with the like in calibration set, you put the metal cylinder, connect the white cable with the cylinder and the ground of the device, and just leave it for 5 minutes, and then just click stop, and then you can make the full scan. Well, also if you just make calibration several times in a row, that's gonna be the same thing. It will be making the same captures, like 20 captures in each calibration. So if you just make calibration procedure like twice or thrice, it will be the same thing. Well, it's up to you how you do it yourself. But in this mode, you can see if what is going on with the device. In the calibration mode, you don't see the parameters, how they are oscillating and how they are changing in time. You see that, for example, intensity and the area started at this level and then get up. Let's wait for 30 seconds more, for example. Okay, so you see that if we are waiting for like 3 minutes, or it's better to wait for 5 minutes, you will see that the parameters are changing in time, and then they're only after some time they're reaching some level at which they're becoming more stable. Okay, so and it's one recommendation. It's better to make these things whilst they're well. You can go for a coffee or tea in the morning when you're starting your work with the device, and just let the device to warm up. Okay, let's wait until 4th minute will end. So you see that here the deviation was much higher in the beginning, and now it is deviating in very small region up to like 4 minutes. That's the sense of the warming up of the device to make it work more stable. Okay. Next question. I have the light orange part inside the green parameters, but outside the pink. That is considered low energy on the energy and health status. So when you go to the this diagram, their norms and definitions of them are the same. Well, if you go to report, for example, it is all written there. If you understand, like very low, low, normal, increase, and high. So this is coloring is the same in all the program. Very low, low, green normal, white is increased, yellow is high. It is the same in all diagrams, and the same here. Colors are the same, like low is pink, high is yellow. So only for these two parameters, like balance and organ balance, where you don't have two sides to change, you have only like very low, low, and normal. Okay, so next question. I have explained this question about the numbers, that's how to find for comparison which parameters. I've explained to you this. The reading of the glow in pixels. Well, I've explained to you that in the diagram you see the calculation according to the pixels. Here you have the calculation of the parameters according to the pixels times intensity and times correction coefficient, and its energy. So that's what you make the comparison from. Yeah, I've explained this also, the numbers that it's better to consider. Area, intensity, and the energy and the form coefficient and entropy coefficient, main parameters. So about the age of a person, no, you don't have to adjust yourself, but you can take it into consideration also, the age factor. Main thing is when you're measuring person and editing profile, what you have to ask a person about is the year of birth. Other two, you can, like, for example, make it 0101. It doesn't matter. Main thing is the year, so that the person, the norms for young, for grown-ups, and for elder people are different in diagrams, for example. Because, for example, here you see the norm here. They're a little bit different. There's norms for elder and younger people. But it depends on the, for example, here you see that it is shifted. The corridor of norm is is narrower here, yeah, for elder person. So this is the age factor. Would you adjust energy health status for vegans? Due to low protein, they may rate lower. Well, of course they may, but you see that these norms are defined like average for average person. And if you want to think that vegans are some specific people, then okay, go on. Well, but just notice what they can do. Well, for example, if I'm like 30 years old, but I can do 20 push-ups easily. So it doesn't matter if I'm vegan or not. But if I cannot do those 20 push-ups, then there is a question why, and maybe because I'm vegan and or low energy, etc. And maybe it's not a good thing for me to be vegan, and it's not the best thing to be vegan in the big city where there's too much stress and too much air, water, and food pollution that we eat, and then it's not the best place to be vegan. If you're living in the countryside where there are not so much people around you and the ecological parameters are much better, then you can be vegan easily. But well, for example, I don't eat meat, but it doesn't matter for me. Well, my energy reserves are okay. So I won't treat them as some specific group, and I won't say that they should have lower energy. Would reverse osmosis water create low energy in a person? Yeah, it's not recommended to drink such water at all, because this is like H2O water that has almost no minerals and salts there. And it's very bad to drink such water because it will drain your body and will take all the minerals and salts from your body with it. So that's not a good thing. It's not recommended to drink reverse osmosis water at all. Yeah, water seems to be key in positive healthy grid status. Yes, if you drink a proper water, that's a good thing. And if you drink it constantly and regularly. Which book is the best to help us with GDV camera analysis? I have already told you that you should take those two last books in the list of papers on the website Bio-Well.com. The book about that speaks about chords. Does the GDV measure capture the images of chords dynamically? I don't have a clue about this. What kind of chords she's speaking, Barbara is speaking about, and What I have already explained in the first lecture, what we are measuring with GDV. If you have specific questions regarding my explanation, just then reformulate the question, because I don't see any correlation between the chords, especially because I don't know what it is. If you would give me a definition, then it's be easier for me to explain, to answer the question. What about intrusions into the human energy system by entities and or other sources? Is it possible to measure it somehow? Well, you see that this device and this technology is giving you the energy state of overall energy state and energy states, functional state of specific organs and systems. And of course, if you change or influence somehow on the person, or some substances, entities will influence on you, it will change the functional energy state of this specific organ or system. You will see that. Well, if you look in the manual about the types of EPI GDV images, the last two, that like shamanic influence, yeah, sometimes EPI GDV shows it, in sometimes not. Because even the illnesses can be in a compensated state in our body, and you won't see anything when you measure such person. To see these problems, you have to get person into a misbalanced state first, and then you will see the real problems there. So he will have no enough forces, energy to compensate these illnesses. So the same may be with these entities. It's possible, and I've heard that there are people who are measuring even these things. About healing sessions and etc. Any medicine. Is it possible to measure the influence on the person? If yes, when and how it should be done? I've already explained that influences can be very, very different. Some influences will be affecting very strongly on a person's state, and then you will easily see the change before and after, like right after. One person, it can be very sensitive, another not sensitive. For one person, you can do many things and he won't react at all, and you won't see any difference in the GDV test. So if you make this EPA test and on Bio-Well, and person is unsensitive to the influence that you're making, you will see no changes. Then if you take the same influence but take another person that is more sensitive, you will see the difference. That's one thing, the person. Another thing is the influence itself, because one, you will see the result right after the influence applied. To another one, you will see delayed reaction. It will take like 20-30 minutes to see the how organism adjusted to the new state and to which way it will move after this. Okay, so these are all the questions that I wanted to answer. Okay, so I thank you all for participating, even though that we are like 1 hour late and I'm already really sleepy. So thank you very much. If you have some brief questions, just you can ask them. But really, it's better if you write them down and just I will answer next time. But about the BioCore, it's a very brief one. According to my experience and according to my knowledge, if people are using it in a correct way, so like they listening to it before getting asleep, then it's giving very good results. Person gets relaxed much faster, and they have they restore the energy during the night much better. So my opinion is that it's working. The main thing is that how you apply it, if it's fitting your needs. If you really need to be relaxed, then it's absolutely good. Okay. Well, I don't know what is my health, but I think that it's not something very unusual. Sound therapy, I think there are tens of devices worldwide that can do like sound therapy. It's up to you. I think that is very pleasant one, and it is based on your readings in Bio-Well software. Then it's more adjusted to your personal state. Okay, so thank you very much. We will discuss with Olga our next lecture. Possibly next lecture will be devoted to the measurements of the environment, the environmental studies and measurements with Sputnik. Okay, so I invite you all to this lecture. I think that we will make 1, 2, maybe 3. I don't know how fast I will be about the measurements of the environment and that concept. So thank you all. Have a good evening, good day. Ciao.